You're not in the will anymore, sweetheart. We need that money for your sister's restaurant. But hey, you can waitress there if you need extra cash. My father said it while buttering a dinner roll, like he was commenting on the weather. Across the table, my sister Brooke smiled into her wine glass. My mother reached over and squeezed Brooke's hand like she just announced a pregnancy. Nobody looked at me. I set my napkin on the table, stood up, folded my coat over my arm, and walked out of my parents' house without closing the front door behind me. The January air hit my face like a slap. Good. I needed to feel something clean. They probably thought I went home to cry. They had no idea I went home to prepare. Have you ever watched your family choose someone over you? Not once, not twice, but every single day of your life. Drop it in the comments. I read all of them. My name is Nora. I'm 31, and for as long as I can remember, I existed in my family as a utility, not a daughter, a resource, something between a backup generator and an emotional punching bag. It started when I was 14. My parents sat me down at the kitchen table and explained that since Brooke had been accepted into a performing arts summer camp in upstate New York, they needed to reallocate my piano lesson money. Reallocate. Like I was a budget line item. I didn't fight it. I just nodded and got a job bussing tables at the Italian restaurant on Elm Street. Every Friday, I handed my mother a portion of my paycheck. She called it helping with groceries. I called it the price of being invisible. That same summer, Brooke got a brand new MacBook for camp, a wardrobe of dance clothes, and a going-away party with a custom cake. I got a pat on the head and a reminder to take out the recycling before garbage day. By the time I was 18, the pattern was etched into our family like grooves in a vinyl record. Brooke wanted acting classes. My college fund shrank. Brooke wanted to study hospitality in Miami. My college fund vanished entirely. I put myself through state-on scholarships, 2 part-time jobs, and a stubbornness that my mother called unladylike and I called survival. I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in forensic accounting. Nobody came to the ceremony. They were in Miami for Brooke's sorority formal. Here's the thing about being the family ghost. You learn to watch, you learn to listen, and you learn that the people who ignore you the most are the ones who never think to hide anything from you. So when my father announced at that catastrophic Sunday dinner that they were liquidating a $200,000 trust my grandfather had left for both of us, and funneling every cent into Brooke's dream restaurant, I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I did what I always do. I went home, and I opened my laptop. It took me 45 minutes to understand the full scope of what they'd done. The trust, originally structured with equal beneficiaries, had been quietly amended 3 years ago by my father, who served as trustee. He'd filed a modification with the probate court, citing disproportionate financial need for Brooke, effectively cutting my share to zero without ever notifying me. My grandfather's attorney had retired. The new attorney was my father's golf buddy. Nobody had checked. Nobody had cared. It wasn't just unfair. It was potentially fraudulent. But I didn't call a lawyer that night. Not yet, because something else was bothering me. Something my father had said at dinner about the restaurant being a sure thing because Brooke had an investor lined up who believed in her vision. In my experience, when someone in my family calls something a sure thing, it's usually about to collapse. I needed to understand where the money was really going, and I had the skills to find out. My family thought I was a mid-level accountant at a boring firm. What they didn't know, what I had deliberately never told them, was that I had spent the last 4 years working as a forensic financial investigator for the State Attorney General's office. I specialized in fraud, restaurant fraud, construction fraud, investment fraud. I spent my days tracing money that people didn't want traced. The irony of my family calling me the boring one while I was literally hunting white-collar criminals for a living still makes me laugh. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how things escalated. 3 weeks after that dinner, Brooke called me, not to apologize, to recruit. "I need you to do the bookkeeping for the restaurant," she said. "No greeting, no small talk. The opening is in 6 weeks, and my accountant just quit. You're good with numbers, right? I can't pay you, obviously, since it's family." I was sitting in my office, surrounded by case files for an active investigation into a chain of fraudulent pop-up restaurants in the metro area. The timing felt like the universe was winking at me. "What happened to your accountant?" I asked. He was asking too many questions. "I need someone who just does what I say." "I'll think about it," I said. "Don't think too long. Mom says you owe us for all the years they supported you." She hung up. Supported me. The words sat in my stomach like a stone. That weekend, my parents showed up at my apartment unannounced. All 3 of them. My mother, my father, and Brooke, who walked in wearing a silk blouse that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Nice place, Brooke said, scanning my living room with thinly veiled contempt. Very minimalist. Where's that boyfriend of yours? My father asked, settling into my couch without being invited. The contractor. Marcus is at work, I said, which was true. What I didn't say was that Marcus wasn't just a contractor. He was the owner of a commercial real estate development firm. He'd started it with a small business loan 5 years ago, and it had grown into one of the most respected firms in the region. But Marcus was quiet about his success. He drove a truck, wore work boots, and never corrected people when they assumed he was just a handyman. He said the best deals come to people nobody sees as a threat. Listen, Nora, my mother began, using her reasonable voice, the one that meant she was about to be deeply unreasonable. Brooke's restaurant is going to put this family on the map. She has an investor, a celebrity chef consultant, and a location on Vine Street. This is bigger than any of us. And we need you to handle the books, my father added. You're the numbers person. That's your role. My role, I repeated. Yes, Brooke stepped forward. Look, I know you're probably still upset about the trust thing, but that money is being invested in something real. Something that matters, not sitting in some boring savings account. When this restaurant takes off, I'll take care of everyone. You'll see. I looked at her, really looked. The spray tan, the veneered teeth, the absolute conviction that the world was a stage built for her performance. Who's the investor? I asked. Brooke's smile flickered for just a fraction of a second. A private group, very exclusive. You wouldn't know them. Try me. It's handled, Nora. Just do the books. My father stood up. She said it's handled. Stop interrogating your sister and start being a team player for once in your life. Fine, I said. The word tasted like strategy. Send me the financial records. I'll review everything. Brooke clapped her hands. Amazing. See? I knew you'd come around. You're finally being useful. There it was. That word again. Useful. They left in a cloud of self-congratulation. Brooke blew me a kiss from the doorway. My mother mouthed, "Thank you," like I'd just agreed to donate a kidney. I locked the door. Then I sat down at my desk and called my supervisor at the AG's office. Remember that Vine Street restaurant case? I said. The one we flagged last month for suspicious LLC filings? I think I have an inside track. My supervisor paused. How inside? It's my sister's restaurant. Long silence. Can you stay objective? I've been objective about my family my entire life. It's the only way I survived them. She approved me to investigate, but added a second auditor to review my work for conflict of interest compliance. Everything by the book. Everything documented. I wasn't going to give anyone a reason to question what came next. Brooke sent me a Dropbox link the following Monday. Here's everything, her text said. Don't bother me with questions. Just make the numbers work. Just make the numbers work. I almost laughed. I opened the files on a secure terminal at the office. What I found wasn't a restaurant business plan. It was a financial haunted house. The first thing I noticed was the investor. Brooke had described them as a private group. The entity on file was called Pinnacle Hospitality Partners, LLC. I ran it through our database. The LLC had been formed 8 months ago in Wyoming, a state famous for its anonymous shell companies. The registered agent was a formation service. No real names attached. I dug deeper. Pinnacle had contributed $350,000 to the restaurant project. That, combined with the $200,000 from my grandfather's trust, meant Brooke was sitting on over $500,000 for a restaurant that didn't have a menu yet. I traced Pinnacle's bank account. The money hadn't come from an investment fund or a hospitality group. It had come from a series of wire transfers originating from 3 other LLCs, all formed within the same 6-month window, all using the same registered agent. One of them, Atlas Dining Concepts, had an interesting detail in its filing. The organizer's email address was listed. It was a Gmail account. And when I ran that email through our investigative databases, it came back linked to one name, Derek Harmon. Derek Harmon. I knew that name. Everyone in the fraud division knew that name. He was a person of interest in an ongoing federal investigation into a restaurant investment scheme that had bilked elderly investors across 3 states out of over $4 million. The scheme was elegant in its cruelty. Harmon would partner with photogenic, charismatic front people, usually young women with big dreams and social media followings, to launch trendy restaurants. He'd structure the financing so that investor money flowed through a maze of LLCs. The restaurants would open with fanfare, operate for 6 to 8 months, then fail due to market conditions. The money would vanish into the LLC labyrinth. The front person would be left holding the bag, technically liable for everything while Harmon dissolved into the shadows. My sister wasn't launching a restaurant. She was the latest puppet in a federal fraud case, and she had no idea. Or did she? I kept digging. Brooke's personal bank records, which she'd foolishly included in the Dropbox along with the business files, showed deposits that didn't match her story. Over the past 4 months, she'd received 6 separate payments of $5,000 each from Atlas Dining Concepts, $30,000 total. The memo lines were creative: consulting fee, brand development, social media services. $30,000 for a restaurant that hadn't served a single plate of food. I sat back and took a breath. This was the part of the investigation that always hurt. The moment when you stopped hoping the person was just stupid and started accepting they might be complicit. Brooke wasn't just Harmon's puppet. She was on his payroll. She was knowingly participating in the scheme, lending her name, her face, and now our family's money to a fraudulent enterprise. The $200,000 from Grandpa's trust wasn't an investment. It was gone. And when the restaurant inevitably failed, Brooke would either take the fall alone or flip on Harmon. Either way, my parents' money was never coming back. I compiled everything: bank records, LLC filings, wire transfer logs, the connection to Harmon, Brooke's personal deposits. I organized it into a formal case file and submitted it to both my supervisor and the federal task force investigating Harmon. Then I made a separate copy. I put it in a manila envelope. On the front, in neat handwriting, I wrote, "Opening night gift." The restaurant's grand opening was a spectacle. Brooke had rented a step-and-repeat banner, hired a photographer, and somehow convinced a local news crew to cover the event. The space on Vine Street had been transformed into a sleek, moody dining room with exposed brick and Edison bulbs. It looked like every trendy restaurant on Instagram, which was exactly the point. Marcus and I arrived together. He wore a navy blazer over a crisp white shirt. I wore a black dress that I'd bought for the occasion. Simple, elegant, the kind of outfit that says, "I'm not here to impress you, I'm here to outlast you." We looked like a couple who belonged there, which, as it turned out, we did, because Marcus had quietly purchased the building 3 months ago when the previous landlord defaulted on a loan. Brooke was paying rent to my boyfriend's company. She just didn't know it. The room was packed. My parents were holding court near the bar, beaming, telling everyone within earshot about their daughter, the restaurateur. My mother had a new haircut. My father was wearing a tie I'd never seen before. They looked like people who had finally arrived somewhere important. They looked like people standing on a trapdoor. Brooke spotted us immediately. She glided over in a red dress and heels that made her tower over me. "You actually came," she said, surprised. "Wouldn't miss it," I said. She leaned in close. "The investor is here tonight, Derek. Be cool, okay? Don't embarrass me with your little accounting questions." "I'll be on my best behavior," I said. I scanned the room and spotted him. Derek Harmon, mid-40s, silver hair, expensive watch, holding a champagne flute like he owned the room. He was chatting with my father, who was nodding along with the desperate eagerness of a man who had bet his daughter's inheritance on a stranger's smile. Brooke took the small stage near the kitchen pass. She clinked a glass. "Thank you all for coming tonight," she began. "This restaurant is a dream come true. A dream that my family believed in when nobody else did. My parents invested everything into this vision because they knew that I was destined for greatness." My mother dabbed her eyes. My father puffed out his chest. Brooke continued. "And I want to give a special thank you to my investor and mentor, Derek Harmon, who saw something in me that..." The front door opened. 2 men in dark suits walked in. Behind them, a woman I recognized from the federal task force. Behind her, 2 uniformed officers. The room went quiet. The woman stepped forward and spoke clearly. "Derek Harmon, you are under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit investment fraud." Harmon's champagne glass hit the floor. It didn't break. It just rolled under a table, fizzing quietly, like the last gasp of a lie. The agents moved quickly. Harmon didn't resist. He looked at Brooke with an expression that wasn't anger or fear. It was nothing. She had been a tool, and now she was a used one. Brooke stood frozen on the stage, microphone still in her hand. "What is happening?" she whispered. The federal agent turned to her. "Ma'am, we'll need you to come with us as well. You've been identified as a knowing participant in a fraudulent investment scheme. You have the right to remain silent." My mother screamed. Not a word, just a sound. Pure, animal denial. My father grabbed the agent's arm. "There's been a mistake. My daughter is a businesswoman. She's not a criminal. The agent looked at him calmly. Sir, your daughter received $30,000 in undisclosed payments from entities controlled by Mr. Harmon. We have the bank records. My father turned to me. I don't know how he knew. Maybe it was the way I was standing. Arms crossed. Face still. Maybe it was 20 years of ignoring me finally backfiring. Because for the first time in his life, he actually looked at me and saw something he didn't recognize. Nora, he said. What did you do? My job, I said. My mother rushed toward me. You did this. You destroyed your sister's dream because you were jealous. You were always jealous. Her dream was a federal crime, I said, keeping my voice level. And Grandpa's $200,000? It's gone. Harmon's operation burned through investor money within weeks. There is no restaurant fund. There never was. My father's face went from red to white. The trust money. Is evidence now, I said. The feds have frozen every account connected to Harmon, including the restaurant operating account, including the account where you deposited Grandpa's trust. But we can get it back, my mother pleaded. When they sort this out, we'll get it back. You won't, I said. Victims of fraud rarely recover more than pennies on the dollar. And given that Brooke was a participant, not just a victim, your chances are even lower. You gave your retirement to a con man because your favorite daughter told you it was a sure thing. You amended Grandpa's trust behind my back to fund it. And now it's gone. The restaurant was emptying. Guests streamed out like the building was on fire. The news crew, to their credit, kept filming. My mother grabbed my arm. You have to fix this. You're the one with the money sense. Fix this. I gently removed her hand. I've been fixing things for this family since I was 14 years old. I'm done. Brooke was let out in handcuffs. She looked at me as she passed, mascara running, and said, You ruined my life. No, I said. You were running a fraud. I just turned on the lights. My parents stood in the middle of the empty restaurant, surrounded by untouched appetizers and abandoned champagne flutes. My father sat down heavily in a chair. My mother kept repeating, This can't be happening. Marcus walked over and put his hand on the small of my back. My father looked up at him. I suppose you're happy, my father spat. The contractor and the accountant. What a pair. Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded document. He placed it on the table in front of my father. What's this? My father asked. The lease agreement for this building, Marcus said quietly. I own it. Your daughter signed a 5-year lease at $18,000 a month. First and last month's rent was paid from the restaurant account, which is now frozen, which means rent is in default, which means I have the legal right to reclaim the space. My father opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked at the document, then at Marcus, then at me. You planned this, he whispered. No, I said. I investigated a crime. Marcus bought a building. The fact that they intersected is what happens when you underestimate the people you threw away. We walked out into the cold night air. Behind us, the Edison bulbs still glowed through the windows of the empty restaurant, warm and golden, lighting up absolutely nothing. Brooke pleaded guilty to 2 counts of wire fraud. She received 18 months in a federal facility and 3 years of supervised release. Derek Harmon got 12 years. The federal investigation eventually recovered about 15% of the stolen funds. My parents got back roughly $30,000 of the $200,000 they'd given away. They couldn't make their mortgage payments after that. The house went into foreclosure 5 months later. Marcus bought it at auction. I told him not to, that it would look vindictive. He said it wasn't about vindication. It was about purpose. He spent 4 months renovating it. New plumbing, new wiring, fresh paint and colors that made the rooms feel warm. He converted the basement into a tutoring center and the garage into a small computer lab with refurbished laptops. We opened it as a transitional housing program for young women aging out of foster care. Girls who had nobody. Girls who had been told their whole lives that they were not enough. Girls who needed someone to look at them and say, You are not a budget line item. You are not a utility. You are a person, and this door is open for you. My parents drove past the house once, about a month after it opened. My mother called me that evening. You put a sign on the lawn, she said. Her voice was small. It's a program, I said. We help young women who aged out of the system. Long silence. Your grandfather would have liked that, she said quietly. It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever received from her. I didn't say thank you. I didn't say I forgive you. I just said, yeah, I think he would have. I hung up and looked out the window of the apartment I'd bought with money I earned myself. Marcus was in the kitchen, making pasta, humming off-key to something on the radio. The counter was covered in flour because he always made a mess and never cared. For 20 years, my family told me I was the boring one, the invisible one, the one who didn't matter. They poured every resource, every dollar, every ounce of love into the daughter who sparkled, and they left me in the dark to figure things out alone. But here's what they never understood. The dark is where you learn to see. And the people who are ignored are the ones who learn to watch. And the ones who watch long enough eventually see everything. They wanted me to be useful, so I was. Just not for them. If this story meant something to you, leave a comment telling me about a time your family made you feel invisible. I want to hear your story. And please, like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss a video, because we're just getting started.